Hey, thanks for joining. I'm building a Lego box for my son to store all of his new stuff. I'm using birch plywood with oak banding and a quarter sawn white oak top. And I built this out of some scrap I've had laying around, including the quarter sawn oak. And this is what I'm explaining to everybody here. This is one project out of 3 for Christmas that I'm making for my son, daughter, and wife. And the idea here is to give my son some privacy because he plays with his Legos and then his sister comes and messes them all up, and he needs some place to keep all of his little tiny spare parts and be able to put his projects away while he's in the middle of creating them. So here I am centering these vertical walls such that I can make 6 total drawers like you saw in the picture, and space them evenly. The idea here is not to use drawer slides or runners, but to just make them drawers that can slip in and pull out, and then he can walk away with the drawer and have all of his Legos in it and take it out on the rug or go sit down at the kitchen table or at his own table in his room or whatever and play with them. Using pocket holes to put the whole thing together with a little bit of glue. It just has some support rails in the bottom that are 1.5 by 3/4 solid oak, and I'm using a jig here from Craig to hold them in place while I mount them. The thing was torquing a little bit, so I put some weight on top of it, my vise and my bead over there. And now I'm using some real basic pieces of oak for drawer runners. And you can see the grain of that white oak is really nice. I'm going to cut it to the right length here with my radial arm saw. Once that's cut to length, I'll end up putting that on the router table. Now I'm using my dado blade to cut the sides of the drawers. And I've got 6 total drawers with 2 sides each, so that's 12 little pieces like this. It turned out these are a little more shallow than I wanted them to be. They should have been a little bit deeper. So I'm worried that I'm going to run out of storage space real quick. If you saw that first picture, my son got a lot of Legos for Christmas. This is the back piece. I'll have pocket holes on the back side of this. And this groove I'm cutting with the dado is going to hold the drawer bottom, which will be a 1/4 inch thick plywood bottom. Assembled like this. The screws from the rear go into the sides of the drawer such that they're perpendicular to the pulling force. And that way it's very difficult to pull them out. On the other hand, the front of the drawer, which will be the entire face of it that's presented, that will be drilled from the rear and screwed from the rear. I was a little lazy here. I didn't want to change my blade because it's kind of labor intensive, and so I'm just ripping the drawer bottoms with my dado. I'm sure people would find reason to complain about that. But I caught all those, and now we're drilling all the pocket holes for the drawers. And this takes a little bit of time. Just drill and repeat. And one thing I was very careful to do was pre-assemble all of them and mark where I wanted to drill my holes on each side so that I could make sure that I don't drill anything in the wrong spot. That's for the front. Now, one thing I didn't really think about was my drawer is so shallow, it's hard for me to get my drill in there to actually screw the drawer in place. So I'm sitting here thinking about it. Oh. So now we're assembling drawers. Again, these are all screwed together, pocket holes. The rear piece is perpendicular to the sides, and the screws are drilled in perpendicular to the pole direction. I've already ripped all the bottoms, so I glue those up and slide them into place. And I'm just pre-assembling 3 sides of these drawers. And get them all done, and then I'm going to cut the drawer fronts. The drawer fronts are also Corson white oak. These are all pieces that I got from Keim Lumber. Keim Lumber is a great store. It's out in Amish country here in Ohio, and they sell anything and everything. Lots of interesting specialty tools, supplying to a lot of furniture builders in that area and hobbyists and people who like to go out to Amish country to buy stuff like that. So you can see the majority of the frame now is done. And here we go with the drawers for a test bit. They're working. I've already cut the drawer fronts there. Now I'm going to take the top of the whole cabinet and I'm going to route a 45-degree bevel. And I've got a router table attachment on my table saw with my Hitachi plunge router mounted underneath. I'm not real precise on how I set that bevel, just whatever feels and looks good. Here are most of the drawers assembled. I'm going to take them all back out and screw that top down. And I'm screwing the top down from the inside. I've already drilled pocket holes going in the upward direction. I'm not super liberal with the amount of glue I use. I see a lot of woodworkers glue every joint. And part of the reason why is if I ever have to do future repairs on this, I don't want to have to fight glue in the disassembly. I really trust pocket holes, so I screwed most of this together. The only place where I really used glue was on the drawer runner supports and the drawers themselves. And one last thing, I used glue on the oak banding on the front of the plywood because that could be considered a solid piece. So I screwed the whole thing together here, fiddle around with it for a while. And then, as the weather has been off and on between cold and warm here, I ended up applying a coat of General Finishes Armor Seal. I didn't do any staining on this. I let that dry. I did a real light sand and then I did another coat. And I put some handles on the side.